Now let's discuss supply. So we just talked about demand, now we're talking about supply. Supply depends a lot on how much producers are able to offer for sale at a specified price in a given period of time. For example, the Roasted Mug, the coffee shop here in Morrill, has enough ingredients, let's say, to make 50 grande vanilla lattes each day. That is the amount or supply that is available to sell. The law of supply states that the greater or the higher the price, the greater the quantity supplied, because producers are able to earn more of a profit. The lower the price, the less a company is able to supply and the less the profits. This means price and quantity, when it comes to supply, have a direct relationship, meaning that they increase and decrease together. As you can see in this supply curve, it goes upward. So the more that we're charging, the more that we're going to supply because we're making more money. An example would be, let's say the Roasted Mug is able to sell a grande latte for $6 instead of $5. The shop decides to keep enough ingredients in stock to make 100 every single day. So selling 100 grande lattes for $6 each means higher profits. But what if the shop is only able to sell the coffee for $4? It might choose to cut back on supply, which means the profits will decrease. The law of supply and demand states that the supply of a good or service will increase when the demand is great and decrease when the demand is low. And this makes sense because think about it, when prices increase, the supply increases and the demand is great. However, when prices decrease and the supply decreases, demand is low. When we combine supply and demand, this has a big effect on what is available. Businesses supply more of a product when they think consumers are willing and able to buy more. Businesses usually decrease supply when they find that fewer consumers will buy. Businesses are trying to balance supply and demand so that they have the products that the customers want. They want to achieve, ultimately, what is called equilibrium, which is the point at which the quantity supplied is equal to the quantity demanded. Supply and demand influence prices and create one of two markets, either a buyer's market or a seller's market. Businesses must lower prices to encourage consumers to buy because there's such a large supply and such a low demand. For example, let's say an automobile manufacturer producing 100,000 two-seater convertibles. Okay, let's say that they are only able to sell 60,000 of these cars for the original price of $50,000. What does the manufacturer need to do to sell the remaining 40,000 convertibles? Well, they must lower the price because the supply is far greater than the demand. The manufacturer might even lose money because it must lower the price to the point that consumers are willing to buy. While this is bad news for the manufacturer, it's great news for customers like us because we get to save quite a bit of money. Okay, a seller's market means that the sellers have the upper hand. Here, the demand is so great that consumers will buy regardless of high prices. So let's go back to the automobile manufacturer example. Let's say we are now producing only 30,000 two-seater convertibles, but 60,000 consumers want the convertibles. As the manufacturer, we could charge more than $50,000 because many consumers are competing to buy the convertibles. Consumers might not be saving money by buying the car, but they're willing to pay the price anyway because there's a really high demand. Let's pretend even way later down the road, you decide to buy a house. Okay, I will show you a scenario and you have to tell me whether or not it's a buyer's or seller's market. Okay, so when you buy a house, could potentially pay lower than the asking price, may have to accept lower than asking. Is this buyer's or seller's market? I hope that you responded buyer's market. Okay, more home options takes longer to sell. Okay, again, this is a buyer's market. More competition among home buyers, likely to receive multiple offers as a seller. This would be who has the upper hand? The seller. So this is a seller's market. Okay, the buyer is prepared to pay higher than the asking price, and as the seller, they are willing to overlook minor repairs that may be needed. Again, this is a seller's market. Okay, so let's talk more about price. Okay, elasticity. There's a new word that you will learn, and that is elasticity, which means changes in price affect sales. Elasticity indicates how changes in the amounts demanded and supplied. So a way you can remember it is a rubber band is an elastic object. When I stretch the rubber band or stretch the price of a product, the more stretched you might feel on money, so you want to buy the product. However, when the rubber band is less stretched or prices are lower, the more you might buy because you have the money to do so. That's what it means when I say elasticity. The goal of a business, remember, is to find the equilibrium price, or the price where quantity of a good or service that buyers demand is equal to the quantity that sellers are supplying. This rarely occurs because there are so many goods and services available. Many of these products are extras or luxuries that consumers do not need to survive. Just think for a moment of the wide range of items you can purchase if you have money. TVs and other expensive electronic equipment, jewelry, cruises, etc. Although you might not want, or maybe you do want a new TV, you likely don't need one to survive. The demands for goods and services like these is very elastic because they are driven by price. More consumers will book a cruise when the price is low than when it is high. Same goes for airline tickets. It's important to know that the availability of substitute products also creates elastic demand. Think of the cruise line. Many cruise lines offer trips ranging from 3 days to 2 weeks. They also offer many different types of accommodations, from an inside cabin to a suite with a balcony. If one cruise is too expensive, consumers have many other less costly ones to choose from. They can make what we call in economics substitutions to get the cruise that has the right price. What do I mean when I say substitution? Well, something that is similar to the product you're considering. So what would be a substitution to Pepsi? Well, I'd hope you'd say Coke. What would be a substitution to a Big Mac? Maybe for some of you, a Whopper. What would be a substitution for a Ford? Some of you might say Chevy. What would be the substitution for coffee? A lot of times people might say tea or hot tea. So the amount of a consumer's income that must be spent on a product creates elastic demand. Expensive products usually require the use of a lot of income. Demand for these items, such as cars, expensive purses, change on the level of a consumer's income. Consumers who have high incomes are more likely to buy these products, which makes sense, and consumers in middle to low income ranges are less likely to buy. Most consumers spend a majority of their income on goods and services they need to survive. Demand is usually inelastic for goods and services needed to survive. Inelastic demand is constant, even if the product's price changes. Some products are necessities that consumers must purchase regardless of their cost. So like prescription drugs, gasoline, electricity, certain food products, toilet paper. Demand for these products remains about the same even when prices increase. So most consumers continue to buy gasoline for their cars no matter how much it costs because they need to drive to work, take their children to work. Inelastic demand might change slightly. This change is not significant. And just think for a second, consider like a staple food item such as milk or bread. Some consumers may not buy as much when the price increases, and overall demand will stay about the same. And price, it's important that you know that price doesn't influence inelastic demand as much as it influences elastic demand. Next, we will be talking about the factors affecting demand.